Welcome to my kitchen. Hi everyone. Here's our final recipe for our meal prep week of hearty and healthy staples. Now these simple and easy biscuits are not super healthy, but we all need a treat once in a while, and homemade is always better. This is something everybody should know how to do. While this recipe is simple, it does take a little bit of practice to get your biscuits light and fluffy. You'll turn your oven on and preheat it at 450 degrees. Once we have our flour in the bowl, we can add the first ingredients that makes these biscuits just a little bit special. It's a little bit of sugar. Not enough to make it sweet, but enough to give it a little different dimension and flavor. I think this is a nice mixture of salty and sweet, which makes these perfect to go along with a savory or sweet dish. This truly is a basic recipe, so all the ingredients play an important part. Some of the simplest recipes can be very complex in flavor. Between the ingredients and technique of making these biscuits, they don't taste basic. Once we get all our dry ingredients in the bowl together, we want to give it a really good whisk. You want this flour mixture to be light and fluffy. We want lots of air in there, and we want everything to be well combined. This part of the technique is also what's going to make them light. Also important to make sure that your ingredients are as fresh as possible, especially the baking powder and the flour. Sometimes our ingredients get older and they don't work as well, and they can have a stale flavor. If you don't bake a lot, you may want to try to buy smaller amounts of things so you can use them up faster. Baking powder and baking soda are ingredients that can definitely go bad. They won't give you that rise that you want in your recipes, and they can taste flat too. So can flour. If you haven't used your flour for a while, you'll want to give it a check. Okay, so another technical step. It comes to your butter. You want your butter super cold. Doesn't have to be frozen, but you want it as cold as possible. Take it out of the refrigerator right before you're ready to use it. You need it to keep its shape so it doesn't get mushy or melt too soon. You want it to stay in little pieces when it goes in the oven. This will help your biscuits get that light and fluffy texture. This is also why I like to use a pastry cutter to make my biscuits. I find that it helps me get the right size of the butter pieces. You could also use a food processor if you wanted to. If you're making a larger amount, I would definitely use a food processor. I use the food processor when I make my pie crust also. For the same reason, it makes the perfect texture. You want little pieces of butter to melt in the oven and leave the little air pockets, and that's where you get your lightness and your fluffiness from. All these little steps together will ensure that your biscuits come out perfect, light, fluffy, and not heavy. When you're done, you'll want to check it. It should look like damp sand. It should have little chunks, but they should fall apart easily. Okay, on to the next part, our liquid. This is also needs to be super cold. I have some buttermilk in the refrigerator left over from another recipe. But if you don't have buttermilk, you can make your own. Use regular milk and add a little vinegar or a little lemon juice. For what we need, you can use 2/3 of a cup of milk and add enough vinegar or lemon juice so it equals 3/4 of a cup of liquid. Pour the buttermilk into the flour mixture and gently mix everything together. This step is important to have a beautiful finished biscuit. Being gentle will help you keep the biscuits tender and soft. You spend a lot of time whisking that flour. You don't want to get rid of all your air by mixing it too roughly. Once most of the flour is incorporated, you'll want to finish it on the countertop. You want to sprinkle some flour on the counter and get the dough out of the bowl. You then want to push everything together and gently shape it into a rectangle. If you find the dough is a little too sticky, you can add a little bit more flour, but I would just add 1 or 2 tablespoons. I would only add a small amount because you don't want to mess up the ratio of the other ingredients. Press the dough down until it's about 1 inch thick. Once you have your rectangle shape, you'll then want to fold it into thirds and reshape it into a rectangle that's about 1 inch thick again. At this point, if you want round biscuits, you can use a biscuit cutter. I prefer just having the squares. This recipe makes 6 good-sized biscuits. I don't like to use a biscuit cutter. You always end up with some leftovers, and when you reshape them and try to get them so you can cut out the rest, I find that sometimes those biscuits are a little bit tough. So I just use a knife and cut it into 6 equal pieces. I used foil-lined baking sheet, and there's no need to grease because of the butter in the recipe. Place the biscuits on the baking sheet about an inch or two apart. They will rise a little bit, so you want some space in between them. The biscuits go in the oven for 25 to 30 minutes. You want them a nice golden color, not too brown because they will get dry. They should sound a little bit hollow when you tap on them also. Before removing the biscuits from the sheet, if you want to, you can spread a little butter on top. This will give it a little bit of a shine. This will change the calorie count of each biscuit. Without the butter on top, each biscuit is 272 calories, has 13 grams of fat, and 5 grams of protein. When the biscuits are cooled completely, you can store them in a plastic bag, either in the counter or in the refrigerator. They also freeze really well. These biscuits really do make a special treat and are a great addition to any meal. I had them with the white turkey chili and once again with some roasted squash soup. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this recipe and I hope you give it a try. Let me know if you have any questions. Don't forget to like and subscribe. For a copy of the complete recipe and a full meal prep menu, go check out my Patreon page.